Marriage is a human universal and the most cherished institution in the world. Most people dream about their wedding day from childhood onwards, and oftentimes no expense is spared in fulfilling that dream. Some people even make finding the right partner and spouse their primary goal in life. However, as wonderful as the institution of marriage is, there are some potential risks involved. So get ready for the 5 greatest risks in marriage. One of the greatest risks in marriage is the distinct possibility of it just not working out in the end, with marriage ending up in divorce. Although most people do go into marriage with the best of intentions, despite a great deal of hard work and effort, sometimes it simply cannot be salvaged. In the United States and in many other countries, there is approximately a 50% chance that a marriage will end in divorce. The reasons for this are many: unhappiness, infidelity, financial insolvency, and sometimes that romantic spark just dies, and the marriage with it. In today's world, people just don't take their marriage commitment seriously anymore because the stories of their grandparents of how a lasting marriage can work no longer seem applicable. There are many theories attempting to explain why divorce is so prevalent these days, but no one theory can account for this trend. Interestingly enough, about 70% of divorces appear to be initiated by women, although the reason for this is a great mystery, despite many theories offered to explain this phenomenon by both academics and lay people. If it weren't unfortunate enough that so many marriages end in failure, that failure is often just the starting point to a long series of both personal and legal trials. Marriage is risky business, and divorce is an expensive business because there is a real risk that you could lose a significant portion of your assets, or even everything. There is a term called the divorce industry that grew out of America in the last few decades that describes how lawyers aggressively push their clients to pursue the most uncompromising and vicious divorce settlements in order to get the most money possible, with some demanding billable hours well into the high hundreds of dollars, if not thousands. Divorce court has become so cruel and brutal that in recent years, the term divorce rape has come to the surface to describe the situation when a person is completely ruined during a divorce, whereby the person loses virtually all assets. Some states also have policies that enforce lifetime alimony, which means that if you are on the paying end of a divorce, your former spouse will be the recipient of a nice salary for the rest of their lives. No work required. In the worst-case scenario, you can even be jailed for failing to make alimony payments, no matter where your health or financial status may be at. All in all, marriage is risky business. One of the worst consequences to result from divorce is the fact that almost universally, one parent gains custody, while the other has at best visitation rights. Sometimes, this includes frequent and regular visits in the case of friendly ex-couples, and even joint custody along the lines of 50-50 custody. But the truth is that such cases are far rarer than the extremes, as usually only one parent gets primary care and custody, and the other parent is limited to the role of bill payer and alimony provider. In many cases, the paying parent can only see their children once or twice a month, despite covering the lion's share of childcare costs and financial matters. This all might seem theoretical, but if you happen to be in this situation, it's hard to imagine anything more painful than not being able to see your own children and being relegated to the role of chief bill payer with nothing else to show for it. Who gets the children is often framed along the lines of the quote-unquote welfare of the children, but more often than not, the criteria for this seem arbitrary and are not applied as the spirit of the policy was intended to be. When we speak of statistics and trends, it is easy to get lost in the numbers, as we tend to forget that real people are involved. As the infamous Joseph Stalin once said, quote, "A single death is a tragedy, the death of millions, a statistic," end quote. This isn't all too different when we get lost in the numbers of an unpleasant matter, such as failed marriages. Divorce is never a pleasant affair, and if one of the former members of a marriage gets the short end of the stick in a divorce, losing access to children, home, as well as having to fork over all of their assets, the risk of depression is incredibly high, and even the risk of suicide grows exponentially. Many people come out of a failed marriage having lost virtually everything they had worked and cared for, and feel like there's nothing left for them to live for after they have lost their money, children, and have even become homeless. In such situations, suicide seems an appropriate answer, and many people successfully undertake this transition from life to death by their own hand. Others drift by in a state of perpetual limbo, feeling nothing but misery, but too paralyzed to take any action, either positive or negative, and thus there's a very real risk of not coming out on top in a marriage, and even death is a real possibility under certain circumstances. You might think that suicide and death are the worst possible outcomes for a failed marriage, but what about marriages that last? Many, if not most marriages, are maintained for the sake of stability for the children in that marriage, and even for the basic reasons of financial stability, but not because the marriages themselves are fulfilling. More than that, marriage is not a fairy tale romance as people are often told growing up, as it is effectively another job, after the job you already have, shouldering multiple responsibilities for multiple people, leaving the persons involved drained, tired, depressed, and just generally unsatisfied. While many people grow up with far-fetched tales of true love and soulmates, the reality of marriage is more likely than not one of drudgery, work, exhaustion, and in the best-case scenario, tolerable boredom. Given these truths, is it not hard to understand why so few people these days even bother with marriage, opting instead for non-official long-term relationships or avoiding such relationships altogether? For more top lists just like this, be sure to leave a like and subscribe if you haven't already, and don't forget to check out our other lists. And thanks for watching, and thanks for learning.